This is more of a serious episode today, but I want to give attention to everything that's happened with the Hockey Canada trial. I think that it is important to sometimes talk about topics that are uncomfortable and have an open conversation.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen. Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues. I promise you, on the next episode, it's going to be all Blues talk. However, I have a platform on here on this podcast to talk about hockey. And we did have a couple of players that were actually on that team. Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou. And they didn't do anything. They weren't brought to trial, nothing like that. But I do think it's really important for me to use my platform doing this podcast to talk about what's been going on. I know I briefly talked about it in my last couple episodes ago, but I didn't really touch on it too much. So I want to take the time to do that on today's episode. And then I promise you it will just be Blues hockey. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I want to start off by saying this. Sometimes when topics are uncomfortable, we don't talk about them. We kind of hope that they pass by and they don't get brought up again. And with the entire case, I didn't want to make any public comments until it was done. I'm not a judge. I'm not somebody that's in law. I don't do any of that. But what I do know is that all 5 players on that Team Canada junior hockey team were acquitted, which means that they were not found guilty. The NHL still will not let any of these players into the league. And that could all change day by day. However, when I see people saying, oh, well, this team should sign them, this team should sign, right now teams cannot do that. Again, by the law, they are not found guilty. And another fact is that the NHL will not allow them in the league. But again, with the law in Canada not finding them guilty, I am sure that they're going to fight to try to get back in the league some of the players. So that is number one. So if you're like, oh, why has no one signed them? That is why they're not even allowed to be in the league. Number 2, and I have been seeing these comments a lot. These players, all 5 of them, may not be able to play the way that they did before the trial and the case as a whole. It's been over a year and a half. And I think if you look at this, right, not based off of what happened, what they were accused of, any of that. If we're looking at it from just a stance of players not playing competitive hockey, I mean, we're going to take Jonathan Toews out of this because that's a completely different situation. But if we're just looking at these 5 players, I just, in my opinion, feel like if they were to go back into the league, that they would have to maybe spend some time in the AHL before they were to play in the NHL. Maybe if we're just going based off of playing wise, I would say out of all 5 of the players, Carter Hart would have the best chance of making a team. However, again, I don't know how these players would play competitively, right? And a year and a half, it's a long time out of the league. And that would be my number one concern. And no, I'm not talking about the case or any of that. I'm just talking purely off of the fact that none of them have been playing in the NHL for over a year and a half. So I just want you to take that into account first off when we're talking about some of these players. I mean, listen, what happened, and nothing good happened that night. And I think that we can all come to the conclusion that nothing good happened that night. A lot of people ask me, do I feel like the right decision was made? I'm not going to get into that. A decision was made, and you have to, at the end of the day, understand that the decision that was made probably didn't come lightly. It probably wasn't an easy decision to make. And that's that. Sometimes cases like these, right? It's not so black and white, and there's a gray area. And I feel like a lot of people have been, just coming at the victim in this, EM, I believe is the initials, and said that this person made it up. Listen, these guys admitted to doing something that night, right? Now, legally, not guilty. And again, I'm going to reiterate that these players were not found guilty. So I'm not coming on this podcast saying that they're guilty, but they were found not guilty. But with morals, right? You have to, it's tough, right? Because you heard what they said, in court and what happened. And then you have to think, ooh, that's not so good. Sorry if you hear my cat making some noise. I have a new kitten. So the mic doesn't even block that out. But you have to think about that. From a moral standpoint, how do you feel about what happened? Now, some of you might say, hey, listen, not guilty. Some of them could still potentially be good players in the NHL. And I hear you. I hear that point. And then I also hear the people that are saying, you know what? I don't like what happened. I don't want this on my team. And I think that this is a really interesting conversation for us here in St. Louis, because there is a player on the Blues now that wasn't involved in this trial, by the way, but did have some problems before with something kind of regarding not this specific situation, but dealt with the case that this person owned up to. And in my opinion, this player took ownership and said, hey, I messed up. I shouldn't have taken those pictures. And they proved to be a good person. And I think that there is a place in my heart for second chances. I think that when you admit to doing something that wasn't right and you want to change how you are as a person and do good, I'm all for that. I think in life, you know, we want to hold people accountable, but we also need to be open minded to the fact that people might change for the good. They might make amends. I don't know what that means to you, and I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm just saying, personally, to me, we have a player in our team that did all of the right things in a situation that wasn't good. And it's really difficult, right, for me to come on here and say, well, I think the Blues should, sign this guy or that guy out of the Team Canada. And again, that is one and not my place. Now, if the NHL allows these guys into the league, then there is a possibility that there are going to be teams that sign them. But I don't think it's fair to crucify those teams that do. I don't think anything could happen that night. I don't. I think that things can happen that are not good, and people can still be found not guilty. I think that two of those statements can be true. And it's not an easy conversation because people just are like, oh, well, Hale, you're not mad about it. I wasn't there, right? And I have to, at the end of the day, tell you, cases like these, they're not easy to listen to. And quite honestly, a decision was made based off of the evidence and the facts. But the evidence and facts still point to things not being so quote unquote innocent, right? And I've seen a lot of posts from people. And I wrote an article, and I'm going to read you my article here on this podcast because I think that it might give you some insight as to maybe why this topic might cause some emotions from people. I know this is an uncomfortable episode, but I think that a lot of people have opinions on it. And I wanted to talk about it because it's been heavy on my mind and I just feel like it is important. So there's no easy way to segue into my sponsor, by the way. But Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. One thing that I love about Monarch Money is that everything is in one place, so it makes it super easy for me to manage all of my money. And that's what I need at the end of the day. I need easy, convenient managing. And that is why I like Monarch Money so much. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right. So, as I stated, I wrote an article kind of on the comments that I saw. And this doesn't have to do with the case, it is the comments. I am seeing so many comments bashing women, bashing men, bashing victims, and whatnot. And I just want to make one thing clear: this is an uncomfortable topic because it has to deal with something so personal to so many people. I think at the end of the day, judging how somebody responds to a traumatic event, it's not my place. It may not be your place, right? Um, I don't know what went on in EM's head. I don't, because I'm not EM. But what I do know is that sometimes people's memory can be a little bit foggy when it comes to trauma. People might act out impulsively. I just know that people react in really weird, unusual ways. So I just want to make that really clear. So I'm going to read you my article because I think it's really important to kind of talk about some of the comments. I even got comments on my own video when I briefly talked about this case of people just continuously victim blaming, not in this specific situation, but just in general when it comes to cases. So, again, not easy. However, I think that it just needs to be said. And I'm going to read you my article. Let's make one thing very clear. Just because someone is found not guilty doesn't make them innocent. Take a minute to process that. Even for me, it took a minute to process what that really means. I always thought if the law found a person or persons not guilty, it meant that they did nothing wrong. Unfortunately, wrongs can be done even if the law doesn't find them guilty. It's the oldest tale in the book. Women can make false accusations. Statistically, false accusations made by women occur in just 2 to 10% of cases, depending on the state. There is no tolerance for false reporting. Let me be clear. However, it's clearly a much lower percentage than many people think. The truth is that coming forward about sexual assault isn't easy, enjoyable, or in any way beneficial. It's degrading, emotionally draining, and nerve-wracking. It is one of the most humiliating processes a woman can go through in life, or man, due to all the judgment, intimidation, and regret. What if I wasn't there that night? What if I didn't? The what ifs eat you alive. The most hurtful part of it all, and get ready for this, is when you share what happened to a friend or someone that you confide in, and they say, but they're such a nice person. They probably didn't mean to. How does this relate to hockey? Following the recent acquittal of Hockey Canada juniors team, it has come up among hockey fans and by some in the local media that some teams might need players. However, it is not in the best interest of a team to sign a player who hasn't played professional hockey in years, and they're not even allowed to play in the league as of yet. It is still something the NHL has called very disturbing and unacceptable. You can disagree with me, but when I see posts about how the victim made this up simply because there are inconsistencies in her story, let me tell you this. Trauma mixed with alcohol consumption and years since the night of the incident can mess up someone's memory. Maybe for some, they remember every detail to the point where the same scent from that night haunts them. For others, it's a blur. Maybe you were lucky enough to not even have to think about how you would act after something such as this happened to you. Finally, let me end on this. If you think it's normal to have someone record a video asking for consent, it most certainly is not. This isn't just about the alleged victim in this trial. It's about the women and men on your feed who read the posts and comments supporting an act of violence that is cruel without accountability. Imagine if accountability were taken. Why is it always the victims who are being blamed? Can someone be found not guilty and still be in the wrong? Yes. And that was my article. Yeah, that was deep and vulnerable and raw and emotional. And it made me think. I had to rewrite that a couple of times, to be honest with you. Because I think when it comes to this case, there isn't something that you can just look past, right? Whether it's the group text or it's the video. And I've seen the transcripts of the video, but again, maybe there's intimidation. I don't know. I was not there. The point is that when I see so many people, and I'm not saying any of the Blues fans, I'm just saying in general, so quick to want to bring back these players into the league or on different teams or whatever, it makes me wonder. It does. Does a player's ability to perform well on the ice undo any wrongs off the ice? And it's not like this is a traffic ticket for not stopping at a stop sign, or this is, public intoxication. This is something that, in my opinion, is worse than that. Now, that's just my opinion. But again, I think that all of us can agree, at least we can agree that nothing good happened that night. And I accept the fact that they were found not guilty. I accept it. I'm not going to argue with it because what good is that going to do? It's not. At the end of the day, a decision was made based off of the evidence, based off of testimonies. And it's blurry. It's not like it's black and white. And I get these comments saying to me, you want to ruin these guys' lives, like they shouldn't. No, that is not what I am saying. I believe accountability is something that is really important. And I just think that if maybe the proper accountability is taken, and I'm not saying jail time, none of that. I don't know what that looks like, but it's a tough thing to see on social media. I can tell you that. more so the comments. And the statistics that I read, they're very true. That it's a very small, and I know 10% seems like a lot, but it ranges state to state. It's state to state statistics. I believe in California, it's like 4.4%. Like it really does range based on state, but it's a very low percentage compared to those who report something that actually did happen. I don't think it would also benefit teams, especially now with all the media coverage surrounding it. I think it would be a really big distraction. It's a really tough topic, honestly. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but sometimes that's life. Sometimes in life, you have to have uncomfortable conversations. And when I think about our team here in St. Louis, and I think about, Logan Mayu, and I think about his past, I'm so proud of the person he's become. I really am. He took accountability and he's been on such a good track. And yes, did he do something bad in the past? Yes, but he took accountability. I'm not excusing what happened, but at the end of the day, Logan proved to be genuine in his response to what he did. And I just want to read you a tweet that I made because I want to reiterate, I don't want this to be just about the trial, right? I don't want this to be, Haley thinks they should have been guilty. I did not say that because I don't think that's my place to say anything. I'm more so talking about the facts. They were found not guilty. They haven't played in the NHL in over a year and a half. They're also not allowed back in the league, which is a factual statement because they're not. And I think it would be too much of a distraction. So let me read you my tweet. I wrote an article talking about the victim blaming of sexual assault. You might be wondering what this has to do with hockey. I saw posts from those talking about the Hockey Canada trial. I'm aware the players were found not guilty. However, the comments made about sexual assault victims made me sick. I read horrible words online, not just talking about EM, but women as a whole making up sexual assault. Does a judge really need to say a guilty for us to come to the conclusion that something bad might have happened that night? The reality is, reporting a sexual assault is something that nobody wants to do. I get there are false reports, and for that, they should be punished. Most of the time, it's real. It's painful. My article was real, authentic, not about the case itself. And I still stand by that. Today's episode, listen, it's about a conversation. We have to just accept what the law decided, not guilty. And we also have to accept the fact that something bad did happen that night. Both can be true. But we also maybe need to be careful what we post on social media when it comes to this topic, because I've seen a lot of comments about the case and about sexual assault victims. And listen, I can't tell you how to think. You have your opinion, and I respect that. I respect every single person. I do. I just think that maybe we should be a little bit careful when we're talking about this topic, because not all women who report a case as a sexual assault are false reporting, right? So again, players not allowed in the league, haven't played in a year and a half. Maybe they will be allowed in the league. I don't know. That's not up to me. That's up to the NHL. I don't know their rules on that. That's, again, nothing to impact our team right now, but I wanted just to talk about it because it has been circulating, and I was really debating on doing an episode on this because it is uncomfortable, but I hope I can maybe made you at least think, give some insight a little bit as to why sometimes victim blaming can be a little bit more harmful than anything. And again, for these 5 players, if I had anything to say to them, and you know what, with one of the players, he was on a team that I covered, and I've spoken to him not about this obviously, but about, his game playing hockey. And I saw him actually and after a game the day before he left. I just hope these guys continue to make much better decisions going forward. I don't think anybody's, past is perfect. I think things happen that are not good, but I can't make that decision for them on how they go forward. But what I can say is that accountability is important, and I'll just leave it at that. Just make good decisions in life, and that's that. All right, I promise it will be blues centric tomorrow because I will have my friend Dylan on with me, and Dylan and I, we talk a lot. So it's going to probably be a 2-episoder with Dylan and I, because I think our last episode, we literally went an hour and 15 minutes, which honestly was not bad for us. Like, that was keeping it light. So I think I'm going to split it up into 2 episodes because we have prospect talk. We have who's going to make the final roster talk. We have Olympic talk. There's so many things to talk about with the Blues. Heavy hitting episode today, but you know what, baby? That's life. All right. I appreciate you all. Thank you for watching and understanding. And you guys are the best. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.